Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to finish off talking about exoplanets. We're going to start off by asking about the sort of planets we really would like to see, which are potentially habitable ones, not all these giant frigid, pulsar, whatever it might be, but actually a planet that you could set a science fiction movie on or something like this. Then we're going to talk about if we could find habitable planets. All we're going to learn about them is their mass and their orbit with the current technology. But what would they actually be like? Would they have giant mountains? Would they have oceans? Would they have atmospheres? We'll talk about these sort of things. And then finally, we're going to try and summarize everything we've learned about exoplanets.
So, I mean, we're talking about habitable planets. We're going to need to think a little bit about what habitable means. Now, we know what is habitable here for life on Earth. And so, here on Earth, we know that you ultimately need water to probably be liquid at some point. So that means the temperature of the planet has to be between sort of 0 and 100 degrees Celsius.
The habitable zone that we've talked about already.
Yep.
So that gives you a certain distance from the star it's got to be in, roughly, though, with things like greenhouse effect, many planets seem to cheat and be outside the zone.
Right, and so also the composition, I mean, if the Earth was made out of solid rock and not have water, carbon at some level associated with it, and oxygen, which seems to be very important, of course, to life here on Earth, then again, it would be problematic. So you can imagine there being worlds out there that are just simply not made out of the right stuff to have life as we know it.
And of course, most of the planets we've discovered so far are probably gas giants, which have no solid surfaces. I suppose you might have some sort of blobby thing that floats around in the atmosphere at the right temperature, but it might be nice to actually have a solid surface. Of course, these gassy things might have moons around them, which is, I think, what Pandora in the movie Avatar was. They put it on a moon around one of these planets. So one thing we don't know at the moment is whether any of these giant things actually have moons, because they might be the good place for life.
But we do have Europa in our own solar system, which is thought possibly to have a water ocean underneath it. But then we get to the big question, I guess, is what is life? And I think at some point we sort of have to work with what we have here. We could speculate even further that there's life based on silicon and all sorts of other things, but I think we're going to try to keep our conversation around the stuff that we actually know.
Yes, so I mean, it could be that life could exist on the surface of the sun, strange magnetic beings, who knows? Maybe our definition of life is too narrow. But let's think about life as we know it.
Yep.
And whether we can see that. So let's start off by talking about what we know so far about potentially habitable planets.